There comes a moment when stepping back is not an act of revenge, but an act of self-restoration. When someone takes your presence for granted, the most powerful move you can make is to let time become the mirror he never dared to look into. Time exposes, it tests, and it transforms. And the longer he goes without you, the more those empty spaces begin to echo with the truth he tried to ignore. You were not just a moment in his life, you were the structure that kept him centered, the warmth he mistook for guaranteed, the peace he assumed would always be there. Now let time show him what that absence truly feels like. Every man believes he is stronger than his emotions until they begin to haunt him in the hours he thought he could numb. At first, he may celebrate the illusion of freedom. He may act unfazed, pretend nothing has shifted, convince himself he doesn't feel your absence. But as the days stretch and the novelty fades, reality begins to crawl out from the shadows. That is when the real unraveling begins. It is in silence, not in arguments, not in explanations, where he confronts the truth he refused to face. You were the anchor, and without you, he drifts. Your distance forces him inward, into the very parts of himself he spent years avoiding. Time strips away ego. It dismantles the facade. It drags his unconscious grief into the open until he can no longer deny what he lost. And it is in that void that he finally begins to understand the magnitude of your presence. Not because you begged to be understood, not because you fought to stay, but because you chose to walk away with your dignity intact. That choice is where your power lies. Do not underestimate what your silence does. It becomes a language he can't escape. It speaks to him when the world grows quiet. It whispers truths he tried to bury. Silence, when driven by self-respect, becomes unforgettable. It is the clearest message you will ever send. I will not carry what is not mine. I will not fight where there is no effort. I will not beg to be seen. And the moment you choose that path, time begins working in your favor. Let time show him that affection without consistency is meaningless. Let time show him that attention without intention is empty. Let time show him that he cannot replace the depth you offered with shallow distractions. The longer he goes without your energy, your loyalty, your stability, the more he feels the pressure of what he mishandled. He may not admit it, he may not confess it, but he will feel it every single day. And the truth about time is this: it does not soften the consequences of losing someone irreplaceable. It sharpens them. You must understand something. Your absence is not about punishing him. It is about reclaiming yourself. It is about stepping back from the places where your soul was shrinking. It is about letting the universe rebalance what your heart carried alone. The longer he goes without you, the more he realizes that you were not simply someone. You were the one who brought clarity where he brought confusion, the one who offered meaning where he offered inconsistency. Time will expose the contrast he ignored. And while he wrestles with what he lost, you evolve, you rise, you grow into someone who no longer needs validation from a man who couldn't hold what you offered with both hands. You transform into the version of yourself that sees clearly, chooses wisely, and demands reciprocity without apology. This is where you reclaim your narrative, not through confrontation, but through elevation. Every day he spends without you is a day where understanding begins to sink in. He starts to feel the consequences of his absence. He starts to notice the void where your warmth once lived. He starts to realize that the emotional bond he underestimated is now the very bond he can't stop thinking about. Time becomes the architect of his regret. And if he ever returns, he won't return the same. He will come back humbled, awakened, aware of the depth he once overlooked. But by then, you will stand in a place of strength that no longer bends. Your power won't come from whether he wants you back. It will come from the clarity that you never needed him to see your worth for it to exist. Let time break him. Let it teach him. Let it show him the truth he thought he could outrun. Because the longer he goes without you, the more he will feel it. And the more he feels it, the more you rise above everything he couldn't appreciate. Your silence is not weakness. Your absence is not defeat. It is the beginning of a new strength, one he will never forget. Distance is not punishment, it is revelation. When you step back, you don't just remove your presence, you remove the comfort, the validation, the emotional shelter he quietly leaned on without ever acknowledging its value. And suddenly, without warning, he is left alone with the parts of himself he worked hard to drown out with distraction, ego, and denial. The shadow he avoided, the fears he refused to face, the insecurities he masked with pride, the truth he buried beneath his own emotional laziness now rises to meet him. Distance strips away the noise, forcing him to look inward, and what he sees there is something he can no longer escape. At first, he may act as though nothing has changed. Men often convince themselves they can outrun the consequences of their own behavior. He may lean into silence, thinking it makes him strong. He may seek temporary validation, hoping it numbs the hollow space where your energy used to live. But distance works slowly, deliberately, and with surgical precision. It doesn't hit him all at once. It creeps in moments he never expected. A quiet evening, a song, a familiar scent, the glimpse of a memory he thought he wouldn't miss. And suddenly, what he denied begins to claw its way into his consciousness. Distance dismantles the illusions he built to protect his ego. Without you, he is forced to sit with the truth. He wasn't as detached as he pretended to be. He wasn't as indifferent as he claimed. You mattered more than his pride allowed him to admit. He may have tried to hide his feelings, even from himself, but distance makes that impossible. When you're no longer there to soften the edges of his life, the contrast becomes sharp, undeniable, and painful. He starts to feel the weight of what he took for granted. And the shadow, the part of him that fears losing someone real, starts to whisper the truth he avoided. He pushed away the very thing he needed. Distance also exposes the emotional habits he relied on. Without you, he must confront the patterns that broke the connection, his inconsistency, his avoidance, his refusal to be fully present. When someone is close, it's easy for him to distract himself from his own flaws, to keep moving without self-reflection. But when you step back, the silence becomes a mirror. It shows him who he really is, not who he pretended to be. It reveals the truth he avoided. He wasn't ready to meet the depth of what you offered, and now he must sit with the consequences of that unreadiness. The shadow he confronts is not just the fear of losing you, it's the fear of seeing himself clearly for the first time. It's the recognition that he failed to match your emotional courage. It's the realization that the version of himself he showed you was incomplete, guarded, and built on walls instead of vulnerability. Distance forces him to question why he couldn't give more, why he hesitated, why he held back even when he knew you were different. And these questions do not fade. They follow him wherever he goes. Slowly, distance becomes the teacher he never wanted. It teaches him that emotional connections don't survive on autopilot. It teaches him that real women leave when they are undervalued. It teaches him that silence is not a void, it is a message, loud and unmistakable. When you withdraw, he learns the cost of neglecting something rare. Your absence becomes the consequence he must live with. And the longer he sits in that space, the more the shadow tightens around him, reminding him of what he lost because he refused to grow when it mattered. Distance also shifts the power. When you remove your energy, your empathy, your availability, he no longer has access to the emotional currency he once used without appreciation. He begins to realize that you were the grounding force in his life, the stability he didn't know he needed. And without you, he becomes unbalanced. He starts to see that your presence wasn't a convenience, it was a privilege. And that recognition hits deeper the longer you stay silent. Meanwhile, you evolve. Distance doesn't just reveal his shadow, it reveals your strength. You begin to reclaim the parts of yourself you gave away. You rise from the uncertainty he created. you rediscover your worth independent of his ability to recognize it. And while he battles the shadow he avoided, you walk toward your own light, stronger, wiser, and more grounded than before. And that is the ultimate truth of distance. It does not break you. It breaks the illusion. It forces him to confront the internal chaos he hid behind pride. It forces him to feel the loss he thought he could handle. It forces him to face the reality that you were not replaceable. You were not passing time. You were not just an option. You were the mirror that showed him what he could become and the loss that shows him what he failed to protect. Distance is not your weakness. It is your power, because the shadow he avoided is now the truth he must face. And the truth is, he misses you more with every passing day. When you remove your presence, you don't simply walk away physically. You pull your energy, your attention, your warmth, and without realizing it, you trigger the deepest parts of his mind, the parts he cannot hide from. Men often believe they operate from logic, from control, from conscious choice. But the truth is far more primal. It is the unconscious that decides what he feels, what he fears, what he longs for. And the moment you step back, that unconscious starts to fight a war he never prepared for. He may think he's fine. He may think your silence doesn't affect him. He may even convince himself he's stronger without you. But the unconscious is not interested in his performance. It cares only about truth. And the truth is this: when someone of value steps away, the psyche reacts before the ego can defend itself. The unconscious begins to pull memories he tried to ignore. It brings back the feeling of your presence, the stability, the connection, the emotional clarity you brought into his life. It makes him replay conversations he brushed off, moments he overlooked, signals he didn't appreciate. It drags him into a confrontation with the reality he avoided. He cared far more than his behavior ever showed. This is the battle he cannot escape. The conscious mind might pretend indifference, but the unconscious does not lie. It begins to push against the walls he built. It starts whispering the truth in the spaces where pride once shouted. It makes him question why he let you slip away. It makes him confront the inconsistency between his actions and his true emotions. And the longer your distance remains, the more this internal tension grows. The unconscious is patient but relentless. It waits until he is alone, until distractions fade, until nighttime strips him of his defenses. That is when the conflict intensifies. He begins to feel the emptiness he created. He starts to notice the silence where your voice used to live. He senses the difference between the peace you gave and the chaos he returns to without you. This battle is not visible on the surface. He will not announce it. He will not show it. But inside, his mind is wrestling between what he wanted and what he lost, between the comfort of avoidance and the pull of honesty. Your absence forces him to confront parts of himself he avoided for years. His fear of vulnerability, his struggle with intimacy, his belief that emotional distance keeps him safe. But the unconscious doesn't let him hide from the truth that these defenses cost him something irreplaceable. Every day he spends without you tightens the pressure in his mind. The protests of the ego grow weaker, and the voice of the unconscious grows louder, more demanding, more urgent. And here's the powerful part. You don't have to do anything for this battle to unfold. Your silence is the catalyst. Your distance is the trigger. You simply stepping back sets in motion a psychological process he cannot control. His mind begins to compare the depth you offered with the hollow comfort of emotional avoidance. It begins to replay the moments where you showed understanding, patience, affection, things he thought he could take for granted. These memories begin to sting, not because they are gone, but because he now realizes he never deserved them with the behavior he gave. This inner conflict makes him restless, irritable, unsettled. He may try to distract himself, but the unconscious does not let go. It keeps returning him to the truth. He lost someone who brought meaning. He lost someone who saw him beyond his facade. He lost someone who offered him the emotional maturity he didn't know he needed. And that loss becomes heavier each day. But this battle is not just about missing you, it's about confronting himself. Distance exposes the gap between the man he was with you and the man he wishes he had been. He begins to regret the things he said, the things he didn't say, the chances he didn't take. He starts questioning why he held on to pride more tightly than he held on to you. This questioning is the beginning of transformation, whether he likes it or not, because the unconscious only pushes this hard when it sees that something important has been lost. While he fights this battle internally, something powerful happens externally. You rise. You begin to see your worth with new clarity. You reclaim your energy. You grow into someone who no longer needs his validation or his half effort. Your strength increases as his avoidance collapses. You evolve while he revisits his mistakes. And this contrast becomes the defining mark of distance. You move forward while he gets trapped in the echoes of what he ruined. The longer you stay back, the deeper the battle becomes. His unconscious begins to dismantle the stories his ego told him. It forces him to see that losing you was not an accident. It was the result of his own choices, his own fears, his own hesitation. And the pain of this realization is what changes a man more than anything else. So let him fight this inner war. Let the unconscious do the work you should never have to do. Because when you step back, the truth begins to rise, and the truth is that he misses you more than he'll ever admit, regrets more than he'll ever say, and battles more than you'll ever see. Your distance is not a threat. It is the mirror that forces him to confront the man he has been, and the man he could become if he ever earns another chance with you. Time is the teacher that arrives without invitation, without permission, without mercy. When you finally step back, when you stop explaining, reminding, forgiving, or absorbing the weight he refused to carry, time takes your place and it teaches in a language he cannot ignore. This teacher doesn't speak gently, it doesn't soothe, it doesn't comfort, it reveals, it exposes, it confronts him with the truth he thought he could outrun. And the longer he lives without your presence, the sharper its lessons become. He may have believed he had all the time in the world. He may have thought you would always be there, always patient, always understanding. But time quickly strips him of that illusion. At first, he may feel free, unbothered, even confident in the choice to let distance grow. But time is patient, and its lessons unfold slowly, layer by layer. What begins as a quiet emptiness turns into an ache. What begins as silence becomes a reminder. What begins as space becomes a confrontation. And he realizes that time does not soften the loss of someone real, it amplifies it. As the days stretch without you, time starts showing him what he couldn't see when he had you. Your consistency becomes clearer, your loyalty becomes louder, your kindness becomes sharper in his memory. He begins to replay the moments he dismissed, the efforts he overlooked, the love he took casually. Time doesn't simply show him what he lost, it forces him to re-experience it emotionally. Every memory from you now plays with a different intensity. Moments that once felt ordinary now feel precious. Where he once had comfort, he now has regret. Time also teaches him something he fought hard to deny. You were not replaceable. Not with distraction, not with temporary attention, not with anyone who comes easily and leaves easily. He may search for someone who feels like you, someone who understands him as deeply, someone who brings the calm you carried in your presence, but nothing fits, nothing feels right, nothing settles the restlessness. Because time has a way of reminding him that depth cannot be substituted with convenience. And the more he tries to run from these realizations, the more time pushes him back into them. It corners him with the truth he avoided. He didn't lose you because he wasn't good enough. He lost you because he wasn't present enough. He didn't lose you because you were difficult. He lost you because he chose the comfort of emotional laziness over the work that intimacy requires. And now he must face the consequences not through your words, but through the lessons time forces him to learn. Time also teaches him what it means to live without someone who genuinely cared. He begins to understand the difference between attention and connection, between interest and intention, between liking someone and valuing someone. You weren't just another person in his life. You were the one who gave meaning where his own inconsistency created confusion. Without you, time reveals the void he thought he could fill. You don't notice a stable foundation until it's gone. And he feels that loss more deeply as the days turn into weeks and the weeks turn into the quiet ache that wakes him at night. While time teaches him, it transforms you. This is the part he never expected. He thought stepping back would make you wait or wonder or weaken, but time does not just teach him, it strengthens you. Away from his confusion, you rediscover your clarity. Away from his mixed signals, you regain your confidence. Away from his uncertainty, you find your direction again. You grow into a version of yourself he didn't nurture. And this is the part that stings him the most. Time shows him that losing you didn't break you, it built you. He begins to realize that you are no longer the person he left behind. Time has elevated you while humbling him. You rise while he reflects. You heal while he regrets. You move forward while he looks back. And this imbalance becomes one of time's sharpest lessons. You cannot lose someone who grows without you, but you can lose yourself by staying where you are not chosen. He now sees the truth. Your absence wasn't abandonment, it was the consequence of his neglect. The longer he goes without you, the more these truths settle into his mind. Time becomes the reminder, the echo, the consequence, and the lesson all at once. Every day teaches him something new. Every moment without you shapes a deeper understanding. Every hour of silence becomes a reflection, and whether he admits it aloud or not, he knows what time is teaching him. You were the one who mattered. Time was the teacher he never wanted, but the teacher he needed. A teacher that shows him what he lost, why he lost it, and what he took for granted. A teacher that leaves no room for excuses, only truth. And the truth is simple. He didn't appreciate you when he had the chance. And now time makes sure he feels it every single day. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not surrender. Silence is not giving up. Silence is the place where your strength gathers itself, sharpens itself, and rises in a way that noise never could. When you stop explaining, stop defending, stop repeating yourself to someone who wasn't listening in the first place, you reclaim the power you forgot you had. Your silence becomes the boundary. Your silence becomes the message. Your silence becomes the shift that forces everything around you to rearrange. Silence is where you step out of the emotional chaos he created and return to yourself. It is the moment you stop pouring into a connection that wasn't pouring back. It is the moment you stop holding up a bond he expected you to maintain alone. In silence, you are no longer giving him access to your energy, your mind, or your heart. And the moment that access is cut off, your power begins to grow quietly, steadily, undeniably. The beauty of silence is that it reveals truth without you having to say a single word. When you speak less, you see more. When you stop filling the space, he's left alone with the echoes of what he took for granted. And those echoes grow louder with time. Your silence makes him feel the contrast between what he had and what he chose to ignore. He begins to wonder why you're not reaching out. He begins to feel the absence. He begins to question his own behavior. Silence doesn't just remove you from the situation, it forces him to sit with himself. Your power grows in silence because silence is self-respect in its purest form. It is you choosing not to argue with someone who already knows what they're doing. It is you choosing not to chase someone who already saw your worth and still gambled with it. It is you choosing not to beg for effort, clarity, affection, or commitment. Silence is the moment you decide you no longer entertain confusion. You no longer tolerate half love. You no longer carry emotional weight that was never yours to hold. In silence, you begin to heal from the inside out. You start seeing patterns you couldn't see while trying to keep the connection alive. You begin to realize that his inconsistency wasn't your fault. His distance wasn't a reflection of your worth. His inability to show up wasn't because you weren't enough. It was because he wasn't ready to be the man your soul required. And the moment you stop trying to make him become something he's not, you return your power to its rightful place with you. Silence also teaches you discipline. It trains your heart not to react to every emotion. It gives your mind space to settle, to breathe, to see clearly. You stop responding out of fear of losing him and start responding out of understanding that losing your peace is far worse. You stop waiting for messages that never come and start building a life that feels full with or without him. You stop hoping he'll change and start recognizing that your growth no longer depends on his behavior. While your power grows, something else happens on his side, something he didn't expect. Your silence disrupts him. It confuses him. He expected you to reach out the way you always did. He expected your loyalty to override your disappointment. He expected your softness to keep bending even after he stopped showing up. But silence breaks the cycle. It forces him to notice the shift. It forces him to feel what it's like when you're no longer there, cushioning his emotional laziness. Silence is the moment he realizes the connection ran on your effort, your intention, your consistency, and without it, everything falls apart. This is why silence is powerful. It reveals who actually values you. If he feels nothing when you pull back, then your silence protected you from someone who was never real. If he feels everything confusion, regret, longing, then your silence wakes him up to the truth he refused to see. But either way, your silence shows you the truth without you having to demand it. It gives you clarity without confrontation. It gives you answers without begging for them. In silence, you grow into someone he no longer recognizes. You become stronger, harder to access, more selective, more grounded. You become a woman who doesn't break when someone leaves because you learn how to stand on your own. Your silence transforms you into someone who doesn't need validation from the person who couldn't appreciate you when he had the chance. And that transformation is what makes your power undeniable. The longer you remain silent, the more you rise. You stop waiting for closure because silence gives you closure within yourself. You stop needing explanations because silence reveals what his actions tried to hide. You stop feeling attached to the idea of what he could be and start accepting the reality of what he chose to be. And when that acceptance settles in, your power becomes unshakable. Your power grows in silence because silence is where you become whole again, where you choose yourself again, where you return home to your own worth, where you rise without asking permission. And when you rise from silence, you rise in a way no one can ignore.